The door slammed behind me, the sound echoing through my tiny apartment, rattling the walls. My chest felt tight, my breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps as I stood frozen, fists clenched at my sides. My heart still pounded from the argument, from the words David had thrown at me, each one slicing deeper than the last. I just don't love you anymore, Emma. It's over. His voice lingered in my head, cold and final, his eyes carrying a quiet certainty that hurt more than any anger could. 3 years together, countless nights planning a future gone in a single sentence. I swallowed hard, stumbling into the kitchen, my fingers curling around the neck of a wine bottle in the fridge. The cold glass bit into my skin as I twisted the cork out and took a long, burning swig. It didn't help. Nothing would. My stomach churned, my mind spinning with all the ways I'd tried to fix things, all the ways I must have failed without realizing it. How could he walk away so easily? I leaned against the counter, staring blankly at the tiled floor. The apartment felt too quiet, the silence pressing in like a weight. I wanted to be angry, to throw something, break something, feel anything but the dull ache settling in my chest. But I just stood there, numb, gripping the wine bottle like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. A knock at the door startled me, cutting through the silence. I flinched, not in the mood for company, not ready to explain the mess I was in. The knocking came again, gentle but persistent. Emma, it's Alex from next door. I heard some noise. You okay? I exhaled, rubbing a hand over my face. Alex. She was a good person, not a best friend, but we'd shared casual drinks, hallway small talk, and complaints about the noisy upstairs neighbors. She had a way of making any situation feel less heavy, and right now, I wasn't sure I wanted to be alone. Dragging myself to the door, I hesitated before unlocking it and pulling it open just enough to see her. She stood there, hands in the pockets of her hoodie, dark eyes filled with quiet concern. Hey, she said softly. You look like you've had a rough night. I almost laughed at the understatement. Instead, I sighed and stepped back, nodding toward the kitchen. Wine's in the fridge. She didn't need more of an invitation. With a small nod, she stepped inside, closing the door behind her and heading to the fridge like she'd done a dozen times before. I sank onto the couch, still gripping my glass, my eyes fixed on nothing in particular. Even without saying a word, having Alex there made me feel less alone. There was something warm about her presence, something grounding. She returned, handing me another glass before settling beside me. She didn't speak right away, just poured her wine and took a sip, her gaze flickering to the muted television. The silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable but steady, like she knew I needed it. So, she said finally, her voice careful. What happened? I stared at the glass in my hands, rolling it between my fingers. David, I muttered. That was all she needed. Alex winced, nodding slowly. Damn, I'm sorry, girl. I shrugged, trying to sound indifferent, but my voice cracked. Yeah, well, what can you do? She didn't offer clichés like you'll find someone else. She just sat there, sipping her wine, giving me space to talk if I wanted. I didn't. Not yet. We sat in silence, the only sounds the faint hum of the fridge and the clink of our glasses against the coffee table. I found myself watching her the way she leaned back, completely relaxed, like she belonged there. The way her fingers tapped idly against the glass, the way her eyes softened when she glanced at me. It was comforting, but also strange, stirring something I couldn't name. I shook the thought away, focusing on the television, but my mind kept drifting back to Alex, to how she hadn't pushed me to talk, hadn't tried to fix anything. She was just there, and somehow, that dulled the pain's sharp edge. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, Alex said after a while, her lips curling into a small, knowing smile. But I'm here if you do. I exhaled, nodding, but didn't trust myself to speak. The wine felt like a lifeline, something to hold onto as my world threatened to spin out of control. Minutes passed, maybe longer. "You know," she murmured, her tone light, "I've been through a breakup all to myself." That caught my attention. I turned to her, searching her face for signs she was just trying to make me feel better. But there was something real in her voice. I asked quietly. She nodded, sipping her wine. "Yeah, it sucks. No two ways about it. But you get through it. Sometimes you come out better on the other side." I let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Not sure how much better I'm gonna be after this." She didn't argue, just stretched her legs out. "Maybe not right away, but eventually. You just need time and maybe a few friends to help you through." The word friends hung between us, heavier than I expected. I'd always thought of Alex as a neighbor, maybe a buddy. But sitting here, in the middle of my mess, she felt like more someone who mattered in a way I hadn't realized. "Thanks," I said quietly, all I could manage. From the way she smiled, it was enough. We clinked our glasses together, the sound soft but solid. As the night stretched on, with the show playing in the background, something shifted inside me. Something I wasn't ready to name. The days blurred together, a mix of distraction and emptiness. I threw myself into work, anything to keep my mind off David. But the breakup's weight clung to me like a shadow, not just the end of a relationship, but the dismantling of a future I'd spent years building. What surprised me, though, wasn't just the loss of David, it was how often I thought about Alex. It started small, a glance in the hallway, a brief exchange, a moment where she lingered longer than expected. I told myself it was because she'd been there during the worst of it, just a good neighbor. But that excuse wore thin as our paths kept crossing, or maybe I let them. One evening, I was staring at my fridge, lost in thought, when a knock echoed through my apartment. I knew it was Alex before I opened the door. "Thought you might need some company," she said, holding up a bottle of wine, her easy smile leaving no room for refusal. I hesitated, part of me wanting to be alone, but the part that felt lighter around her won out. "Yeah," I muttered, stepping aside. "Come in." We ended up on the couch, wine in hand, the television playing something we ignored. The conversation drifted, light at first, but then Alex started talking about a breakup she'd gone through years ago, her voice calm but carrying a hint of deeper pain. "I thought it was the end of the world," she admitted, leaning back. "Felt like I'd never stop hurting. But you do, eventually. You just have to let yourself feel it first." I sipped my wine, avoiding her gaze. "I don't know if I want to feel it. That's the problem." She nudged my knee lightly with hers. "You can't skip to the part where it doesn't hurt anymore." I exhaled sharply. "Great. That's exactly what I wanted to hear." She chuckled, the sound warm, sending a strange heat through me. Moments like these kept happening, small, unassuming, but important. One night, restless and unable to sleep, I stepped onto my balcony, only to see Alex outside her apartment, headphones on, eyes closed. I could have ignored her, but I called out, "Can't sleep either." Her eyes opened, a lazy grin spreading across her face. "Nah, too much on my mind." "Same," I admitted. She patted the chair next to her. "Come on, let's go for a walk." I almost declined, but soon we were wandering the quiet streets, her talking about music, the weird neighbor who stole packages, nothing and everything. My shoulders relaxed, my thoughts less heavy. I didn't know what it was about Alex that made everything easier, but I wasn't questioning it. Then I started noticing things, her laughter lingering in my mind, the brush of her hand when passing a drink, the way her voice sounded when she said my name, like she really saw me. It was easy to write off as loneliness, a side effect of the breakup. But one night, in her apartment, watching a dumb action movie, she made a sarcastic comment that sent me into a real laugh, the first in weeks. When I glanced at her, she was already looking at me, something unreadable in her eyes before she turned away. My stomach twisted, a reaction I didn't understand, so I ignored it. Ignored the way my pulse skipped when her shirt lifted slightly, exposing a sliver of her toned stomach. Ignored how my chest tightened when she leaned close to grab the remote, her scent lingering too long. It was nothing. It had to be nothing. But I was noticing too much. Another brutal day at work left me exhausted, not just in body but in my bones. Sleep hadn't come easily, and I knew tonight would be no different. Instead of drowning in my thoughts, I found myself at Alex's door, my pulse thrumming too fast. The door swung open, and her slow, knowing smile greeted me. "Rough day." I nodded. "You could say that." She stepped aside, and the familiarity of her place settled over me, the faint scent of her perfume, the warm lighting. "You need a drink," she declared, already heading to the kitchen. "Please," I muttered, sinking onto H.